Welcome to the Enlighten Up podcast, where I am going to take you into a deep exploration of what it means to exist in this current reality. We are going to raise your vibes, open your mind, expand your heart, and dive deep into the wondrous mysteries and possibilities of this lifetime. There's been a spiritual catalyst that has set in motion the awakening process of many across the globe to return to the knowingness of self and unite what has been separated. Together, we're going to bring light into that darkness. We're going to remember the joy of living. But most of all, we're going to turn up the volume of our own eternal power and do the thing we're here to do. Welcome back to the Enlighten Up podcast, everyone. Super happy to be here with you and to introduce you to a brand new guest because she is the embodiment of careful what you wish for, because Meghann Dawson actually got the corporate dream she joked about and immediately realized it was a nightmare wrapped in a title. So she told her coworkers, I'll stay until I'm a director and flying on a corporate jet. And within a shockingly short timeline, she had the title, the jet, the prestige, and also the burnout, the booze-soaked culture, and the sinking feeling that she has built a ladder to potentially nowhere. And now she's the guide for everyone else stuck in the trauma loop, burnout-fueled hamster wheel, pretending to be success. Her community, Becoming is Messy, is exactly that. The place where you stop performing the life you're supposed to want and finally start claiming the one you actually came here to live. So today we're going to dive into the real cost of corporate survival, the psychology of staying too long, and the courage to walk away, and what happens when you stop negotiating with your soul.
Whoa.
Meghann.
Oh, wow. You gave me goosebumps. What an introduction. Thank you. I am excited
Welcome.
to be here.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Welcome, welcome, welcome. So, this is actually really fun to do this show with you because I recently just had a client of mine on the podcast to share her. She was at my most recent retreat
Yep.
in September, and she is in corporate and wanting to leave corporate to pursue her dream of doing similar work
Yep.
and working with the energy and healing and all of that wonderful stuff. And so I know I've got other clients who are in the same position. So I'm really excited to dive into your experience and journey through the corporate experience, as that is something I am very unfamiliar with. I never even dipped my toe in that pond. So,
Yep.
um, first of all, how are you doing today?
Oh, I am doing wonderful. I actually, just reconnected with some old coworkers and close friends this morning and did a little volunteer activity. And so energetically, I am just excited, feeling really good. And I think today's conversation is going to be great. I love this topic. I think it's so important these days. I'm hearing more and more specifically from women that are having kind of that internal nudge, pushing them in a direction outside of kind of traditional workspace. And
Mhm.
so it's really a relevant and exciting topic, and I can't wait to get to it.
I know, I know. So I love your podcast is called Becoming is Messy,
That's
correct?
right. Yes.
Okay, and so I love this title. I love the concept, and it's very true. I mean,
Yes.
it's
Oh,
raw,
yep.
it's messy, there's nothing pretty really about it
Nope.
until you are actually in the becoming stage of like, really solidifying. But tell me a little bit about more from of that and why you chose that as your podcast name. I mean, besides the
Yes. Oh
obvious.
my gosh, yes. So, for me, a big part of my story that we'll get into different pieces of today, it is the whole idea of authenticity versus performing. And I find that, as little kids, we're simply ourselves. And then the older we get, we start hiding pieces of ourselves. We start building secrets up. We start kind of putting into our vaults all of these things that we think make us essentially bad people. And eventually, those secrets become this heavy weight of shame that get you to a point, at least for me, where I no longer recognized myself. My health started deteriorating. The more that I had veered away from who I truly was as a person, I really became kind of a shell of a person. And what I found was owning those secrets, starting to let out some of those feelings of shame to my trusted circle,
Mm-hmm.
beginning to shed light on my whole self and not just the things about me that I thought were perfect.
Mm-hmm.
I always thought that would push people away. It actually brought me so much closer to the people in my life. And
Mm-hmm.
so ever since, I've just been talking more and more openly about all of my truth, and at this point, no secrets. It's all out there. And what I found is, every time I share, somebody else comes back with their own messy story. And I've yet to meet somebody that doesn't have messiness in their background. We all do.
No.
That's part of growing and learning. And so the whole idea of my community, my podcast, is to just embrace our mess. I believe it's my purpose to get us to a point where there's nothing that we can't talk about. I
Mm-hmm.
think I think that we've just been conditioned to hide so much of ourselves, and it's been so damaging to our souls. And so let's just change the narrative and get to a point where we just own we're all messy beings, and let's just embrace the wholeness of ourselves and share what makes us human.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that I've realized, especially this has come up a lot with different women who have worked with me and are really wanting to connect more to that raw, unfiltered feminine energy, the dark feminine energy that I think is
Yes,
so beautiful because it holds a lot of
same.
power for the
Yep.
creative. It's about working with the creatrix and everything. So when, in order to really fully connect to that dark, raw feminine energy, um, it's you can't do it without being messy. If
Right.
you
Oh, so
cannot,
true. Yeah.
like you have got to be willing to drop all formats of perfection, all formats of thinking you need to look the part, act the part, be the part, like all those things, and just let everything go. Like it's
Yep.
fully surrendering to that abstract, raw feminine energy. And I've found that when women are, and I'm just speaking specifically about women because this seems to be what comes up for a lot of women and my
Oh, for
clients,
sure. Yep.
is that they connect to so much more intuitive power when they do this.
Yes. Yep. Yep. And don't you find that, especially, I work mostly with women, so I do reference women a lot, although I have some male listeners who are huge fans and reach out and share how these insights help them too. So I do tend to reference women a lot, but I find that, we've talked about the corporate world. I had a 23-year wonderful corporate career, and maybe in another season in my life I would go back to it. For me, I had just hit a point where I got that nudge from the universe that it was no longer a fit for me. Actually, the joke about the jet and the director title or it was a joke at one point, because when I was coming up in the ranks at my last company, I was asked, what's your vision for your next role? Where do you see yourself going? And I had no idea. So I joked and I said, I think that I'll be done here once I become a director. And, in the moment that title sounded important to me.
Hmm.
So once I reach that title and once I've flown on the company's private jet, that was in my mind kind of a joke around what I thought status, that you made it if you did those two
Hmm.
things. Well, those things actually happened, and after being at the company for years, and very quickly I landed on a team that was very toxic for me. It was kind of like the universe was like, "Oh, we didn't think you were kidding. You got those two things.
Yeah.
So we're now going to keep on reminding you it's time to move on." And so, my health started deteriorating, and for me, I just got to a point where I could tell that the role was just no longer serving me. Nothing against the team or the role for somebody else. It just for me was the wrong fit at the wrong time. And kind of back to your point a second ago around, as tapping into that darker femininity. those of people haven't done, not everybody's done that before. And if you haven't done that work yet, it feels so scary. It feels like, I don't want to take the leap into the unknown. I want to avoid that. Like I can't leave a big paycheck. I can't. So it's like we let our body suffer. We hide our voices, we hide our authenticity. And essentially that's now the work that I do is to help people that are at that crossroads be able to learn how to embody their own wisdom. How do they alchemize their pain and their whole story and turn that into the wisdom they need to navigate the moments like that so they can
Hmm.
take the leap and follow the path to that really strong power, feminine energy that's residing in them. They just don't know how to use it yet.
Yeah. And I think one of the reasons why it is so raw and it is like I call it dark, which some people might attribute a negative connotation to that. It's
Yep.
not.
Yep.
It's just raw, it's primal, it's sensual, it's
Yep.
sexual, it's creative, it's messy, it's,
Yep.
allowing yourself to have the ugly cry. Like it's all of it,
All of
right?
it, all of it. And it's real. It's all
It's
of those
so
things.
real.
It's real. So, yes, agreed.
Yeah. So, take me through before we kind of go more into like the work that you're doing now.
Sure.
Take me through what it was like for you navigating that corporate lifestyle that was you were realizing was not in alignment with your health,
Yep.
also likely what you knew you were designed to be doing. Like, what
Yeah.
was that like for you in a sense of obviously you're compromising.
That's right. That's right. And I had my, just like so many people, I had my perfect career plan. I've been very fortunate. I've had a wonderful, more than 2 decades career, climbing the corporate ladder, traveling, running conferences, very passionate, a wonderful credit union industry, so many great people I got to work with. And that was so filling. I essentially, in many ways, feel like I grew up in that industry. And then there have been other periods in my life. My original coaching framework was born out of the steps leaving an unhealthy marriage. So I've been in that situation before where I've ignored the calling too long. So I ignored the time I was supposed to leave my unhealthy marriage and the time I was supposed to leave a prior job. Both of those times, my health started deteriorating. I feel things deeply. My body just alchemizes all of that ick when I'm not aligned. And so when I ignored those callings, I got sick. I was tired. I was anxious. And eventually, each of those times led me to literally be hit over the head. They're crazy long stories, but essentially, the most recent one with the work situation years ago, I was running so thin and ragged. I'd be on site running these conferences, going from room to room, doing these checks, just trying to run and do everything. My heart rate was always up. And I slipped and I fell and I hit my head and actually landed in the hospital with a very severe concussion.
Oh.
And it was clear to me that the universe speaks to you in whispers and it gets louder and louder until it hits you over the head.
Mm,
That has literally been my experience twice now. And
yeah.
so for me now, all these years later, I now know how to heed that call much sooner. I'm very purposeful to be able to hear that call, know when my inner knowing is speaking to me, and heed the advice. And again, it's like the riskier the stakes, if it still takes me some courage to be able to do it. So this most recent time around, with my career this past January, those other things started happening again. My health was taking a dip. I was crying at the gym every day. I was wanting to sleep all the time. Monday morning came and I felt dread.
Mm,
So it's those things. And I could see those increasing. So I didn't want another hit over the head. I'm like, okay, universe, I hear you. It is time. And so for me, I went to my boss and was very candid of the things I needed to change at work in order for me to feel fully aligned and valued in the work I was doing. And at the end of the day, we ended up not being able to come to terms with that. And so without things changing, I just had to take the leap because I knew that for me, the universe wasn't going to go away. It was clear that it was time for me to move on if there wasn't going to be change.
Well, yeah, no, because the universe was whispering until it used what I call the cosmic two by four.
Yeah, right. And
You
it
don't want
does.
what
It's
comes after the
crazy, but it
cosmic two by
does.
four.
Oh, I don't want it. I'm like, I can feel it coming,
Yeah.
and those are extreme examples in my life where it's like I have stories like that all the time where it's like my inner voice is my guide. It's like I think that's our most important tool is for us to all get clear on that inner voice and inner knowing. But yeah, it's still some once in a while there's some bigger leaps that take me maybe some louder messages, but I want to stop there. No more head injuries
Yeah.
in my
Yeah.
future.
Well, it's interesting because I've been speaking like about this to my audience a
Yeah.
little bit more about the negotiation that we engage in with when we're wanting to step forward into our future, but we're still negotiating with the past.
Yeah,
And
that's
as
huge.
you still continue to negotiate with the past, that is when you begin to create delays and detours and a lot of disruption in your current life because you're really kind of broadcasting a very confused signal about what you really want and what you say you're stepping towards. You say you want to step into your future, but you keep negotiating with your past. And so negotiation is like the number one killer to the timeline that you really want for yourself. So clearly, you weren't willing to negotiate with your boss and your corporate lifestyle further. So, what happened when you stopped negotiating?
Yeah, so yeah, our company had been going through some big change at the time, and so eventually we were able to come to just a mutual agreement. And I was fortunate to be able to have my position ended up being eliminated, so I was able to secure severance, which was huge to head into the season of launching my own business, while still getting a paycheck for a time being. And so for this last year, it's been, kind of baby steps of starting over, building this practice, and calling back to my degree in psychology, getting my coaching certification, and just starting to build a business from the ground up, along with my podcast, and just starting to kind of figure out how to be an entrepreneur. And I will say, similar to what you've just said about that ambiguity when you're telling universe what you want, I've noticed even in this season, as I'm building this, continually having to refine and make sure that I'm getting as clear as possible. Because, at first I jumped into this as a brand new business owner, and it's kind of like, well, maybe I'll coach a little, maybe I'll speak a little, maybe I'll contract a little, maybe I'll do, let me, and as time has gone by, more things have come into clear view and crystallized, and I continually refine that vision, and now have a very clear manifesting mantra that I say every single night, really to bring in the vision that I have in mind with clarity.
Hmm. That's so important. Do you feel that clarity is not something that's given to you? It's something you breed through choosing with your heart and soul.
Yes, I 100% believe that. For me too, I'm a huge believer in human design.
Hmm.
So for me, and I'm not always the best at what each category is called. I'm not a teacher of the practice. However, I do know that I am an open manifester. So for me, I do best when I am manifesting a feeling versus a thing. So for me, it's really working on keeping my vibration high and asking the universe, telling the universe a very general. So for me, my mantra each night is simply I am whole, free, and open for overflow. Life delights in surprising me with abundance.
Hmm.
That's my mantra. for other people, my husband, for example, his is a defined thing. So he really is manifesting goals at a time. He has much more specifics of what he's manifesting. And so for our partnership, it's really kind of neat to be able to bridge those two and bring that into our marriage and
Yeah.
have kind of both of those styles. I think it's just another example, though, of it's really individual to each of us. How, the way we do this is unique to you and I and all of the people listening. And it's really learning about yourself, having a curiosity about yourself to know how do you maximize your makeup to
Hmm.
be able to build this. And for me, it's really all about that vibration. If I focus on that, really it's just having to feel in each moment. And the
Hmm.
next steps get clearer and clearer and clearer.
Well, speak to that vibration because we hear high vibration thrown around a lot, but
Yeah,
it's a
yep,
very ambiguous declaration. So for
totally.
you,
Yes.
what does high vibration feel like? What it like?
Yes.
Give us some of the tangibilities of that.
Yeah, so for me, I love the word, and my Jersey accent always messes this word up a bunch, but it's all, AWE, not
Okay.
ALL. Yeah, so AEW all, and so and really as I was crafting my mantra, I did some work really thinking of the times that I just feel just connected to the universe. What is that? For me, it's the word awe. It's when I'm standing looking at a beautiful nature scene. I love hikes. I love like landing at a view where you're looking over water or a mountain. I love being with community in a concert or a storytelling show. And so I really have tried to maintain that feeling. And I know what that feeling is. And so for me, it's how do I have that in my day to day? And the
Mm,
way I have it is I have a sun lamp in my bathroom. I turn that on in the morning and I listen to upbeat music. Music is huge for me. So I feel like a upbeat song. Lately, I feel like I've been listening a little bit to old stuff. Some of the more upbeat Queen, Don't Stop Me Now is one
yeah.
that it gives me a good vibe. Electric Love by Borns is another one where it's just that music just in my own house it copies that feeling. So for me, for others, it's what is your state of being that brings you the most energy? Where do you feel just kind of your skin feels almost electric. You feel alive. You feel and I think for everybody that's going to be a little bit different. Some people might use the word peace. Maybe that's the feeling you want to capture. Awe is a good one, joy is one. But everybody's going to be a little bit different.
Hmm.
How do you recreate that yourself? Start by thinking of the examples that give it to you, but then start working on you making yourself feel that way in
Hmm.
any way that you can.
Yeah. No, I love that you said awe because I agree with you. I think that's a really I think that's a very accurate way of describing a high frequency that you can work with when you're wanting to really call in the timeline that you are envisioning, wanting to kind of collapse time around. For me, it's like a mixture of awe, but I just kind of recently put out an 1111 portal live
Mm.
transmission that is that I use every day. I use this every day in like my meditation and I call it the unfuckable yes.
Oh, I love it.
Yeah.
Yes.
And so that's kind of
Good.
how I describe like the high
Yes. It's
frequency
so
feeling
true. Yep.
because everything is like when you think about that term, it is broadcasting 100% clarity and certainty.
Yes.
There
Yep.
is zero wavering. There's no negotiation anymore.
Yep.
So
It's
there's
so
no
true.
confusion.
Yep.
And it's like the frequency of winning, like we're
Yes. Oh,
winning.
so winning. That's a great one. Yes.
Yeah.
Totally. I
So I
love
love
that.
engaging in that frequency,
Yep.
which usually also is coupled, like it just naturally brings in gratitude. It naturally brings
Yep.
in joy. It naturally brings in excitement, right? So I think all of those things are kind of creating this really great cocktail frequency to kind of to sip on in morning meditation
Yes.
or
Ooh, I
evening
love it.
meditation, whatever kind of
Yes.
meditation.
Oh, I
But
love it. My husband and I are big for both of us, for both of our human design styles. We both are, I'm a wait for invitation person. And his is something similar. I forget the phrasing for his, but we kind of have to be asked to do things. And as we are, we're a big, if it's a fuck yeah, then we're in. If it's anything else, then we're out. Like
yeah.
we make that we just decide our life on fuck yeah. I mean, and it really does that litmus test. It just guides you so right. And to me, it's just the great language that's truly aligned with what your soul wants you to do.
Yeah. Yeah. It's that unwavering conviction too, that you really need. What it does is I believe what I've seen and what it does is when you remove the negotiation from the field and you kind
Yep.
of create that unfuckable yes energy in your vision, in your body, in everything, your field, it starts to bend space and time to create that wormhole between your future timeline and your
Yep.
current now.
Yep.
And so that is like to me one of like the fastest ways to do that. So I love that that's something that you're also working with. So you kind of let's get into
Yeah,
some of the
please.
mess of the beautiful work that you do. So where like for you personally, because I am assuming that a lot of your work also comes from your own personal experience with the
Yep,
journey.
of course.
So what was your journey like when kind of taking a deep dive into the darkness?
Yeah, I mean, I have a dark background, and I mean that a little bit in a little bit of a, I would say negative. I have a connotation because it's a chronic trauma background. And so for me, lots of pain right out of the gate. I was born healthy 6 weeks early and caught an infection right at birth that wreaked havoc on my little body and damaged most of my joints and bones. And so I've had a lifetime of surgeries piling up, even to today. Crazy surgeries, things like limb lengthening, having my arms stretched like 3 inches each with like a fixator device, like so insane. I was a kid who, at school sometimes had to be out for surgeries, or then I was back with in a wheelchair. Sometimes I was on crutches. I just very much always, I grew up just hating my body and feeling very feeling like an outsider. At the same time, I was growing up in a household where I was the oldest daughter. I have two younger brothers, and my father was a verbally abusive alcoholic. So, as the oldest sister in the household, I much took on that caregiver, protector vibe, feeling like I had to take care of my mom and my little kids. I mean, my little siblings as early as 6 and 7 years old. I had that weight on my shoulders, and so I really grew into a people pleaser, a somebody that had many coping mechanisms. I very much learned the numbing power of alcohol at a very young age. I was drinking in sixth grade, finding attention from boys in all the wrong places and men when I was far too young. And so I grew up, those were really the places that I found belonging, were in the places that weren't good for me. So that like led into a lifetime of just years of well into my late 20s, very unhealthy relationships. But at the same time, my another coping mechanism was perfectionism. So I was a straight A student. I was, valedictorian of eighth grade class. I eventually went to Penn State, great college degrees, great career. And so essentially, I just felt like two different people for so long. There was this me that was out in the world, and people thought highly of me. People thought, oh my gosh, Megan's so kind, Megan's smart, and I loved that praise. That felt like a drug to me, to be praised. That felt like acceptance in the external world. And then behind the scenes, I just was doing things that were adding to all those secrets and adding to my shame. So for years I just felt like if the world knew who I truly was, I would be shunned. Everybody would hate me. The few people that loved me would be gone. And so, long story short, bringing it, closer to the present, the shift for me happened in that marriage I mentioned. I was in my first marriage where my ex-husband was very much like the verbally abusive dad I grew up with. Also drank too much and belittled me and very much made me a shell of a person. And then I became a mom, and I was up one night nursing my daughter, and it was the first time that I had that inner knowing feeling. I think it had just been quieted for so long, but my love for her just sparked it. And I felt something so deeply inside me that just said, you need to do better. You and her deserve better. And of course, I didn't know what it meant. I didn't know what I was meant to do with that, but I did know it to be true.
Hmm.
And that led into 2 years of just my spiritual growth. And then this is essentially what became my coaching framework, which is called the Imperfect Level Up. Level Up is an acronym, and it's essentially 7 competencies that really help people. It certainly helped me in those 2 years alchemize my pain and my story and turn those into my strengths. And so essentially it was over those 2 years, it was me going to a therapist secretively. I knew my ex-husband wouldn't have approved, and so I started doing it behind the scenes and digging into my childhood, but from a different perspective. Now as a mom, I could look at my childhood in a more loving way. Instead of judging 6-year-old me for doing the best that she could to survive, I could look from a lens of grace. Now, as a mom who realized, God, it was never fair to put that on me.
Hmm.
And so, I healed that, spent, tons of times in counseling. And then I also ended up looking at the messy patterns in my life. Over that time, I did end up having an affair. I fell in love with my best friend, and I started thinking for a while I could just keep having this double life. This could fill me up enough, and then it didn't anymore. And it was kind of like, okay, I need to look truly at this. Why does this happen? Why don't I have healthy relationships? I know there's a lesson in here. And essentially that was kind of the path, was just truly analyzing and trying to find the lesson in it all and connecting the dots back across my life. And as I did, the universe started aligning with me. I started discovering signs. I started, learning all about synchronicities, law of attraction. My favorite back then was the Celestine prophecy. For
Oh, I love
me,
the Celestine prophecy.
I still read it. I go read it once in a while again. So for anybody listening that hasn't read it, for me, it just gave me the language. It just spoke to me.
Oh, 1 second.
People are kind of getting themselves first, and then that plugs you into the messages the universe has for you.
Yeah, sorry, we just cut out there. Right after you were saying you read the Celestine prophecy and it gave you the language that you needed. Everything else kind of just
Yeah,
cut out there for a second because I think my
yeah,
internet went all wonky. So can
yeah.
you just repeat that for us?
Okay, yeah, yeah, sure. Yes, yeah,
Yes.
yeah. So the Celestine prophecy, yeah. So it gave me a language of what I was feeling, and so it helped put into perspective that I wasn't crazy, but that as I was healing my inner self, the external world was showing up around me to support and guide me on that journey. And I think so the Celestine prophecy has a final chapter in it that talks about, the power of us collectively, going through these exercises to really heal ourselves and tap into the power of the universe. I think that we're at that point right now. To me, it just feels like I hear more and more people, talking about the same thing. We don't always use the same words, but I feel like we all have kind of landed on a very similar framework where it's, getting still, hearing your inner voice, working to kind of heal your past traumas. It's all really a path to loving yourself, which is essentially, kind of the end of my steps, is getting to a place where you love your whole self and you can comfortably talk about your whole self It might not be with everybody. It might be just journaling. It might just be with your closest friend. It might just be with a therapist, but you're able to just talk about the pieces of your story and none of them bring you shame anymore because you love all of yourself.
Hmm. So, kind of going back to what you shared, the how your relationships were unhealthy and realizing, "Ooh, this needs to change." What was it within your own self that you had to confront that was attributing to those unhealthy relationships?
Yeah, I think it was the deep self-loathing. I think that for me, it really was the shame that I carried and the secrets I held on to. And then also, really, I mean, I think attention from men that weren't good for me. That could be men in relationships. It could
Hmm.
be, a whole caveat of things, men with addictions. I think for me, that was an addiction. It was just what I knew. And so those, I think, were kind of repeating patterns until I learned to really heal that inner perspective of myself. I've learned that I had been setting the bar for how people treat me. And
Hmm.
so for me, I since I loathed myself, of course, I was bringing in other people that didn't respect me. And so, what that ended up looking like was me eventually, getting divorced from a bad marriage and eventually, confronting and a therapist I went to was wonderful. He shared with me, he asked me one time, tell me about all these people you've dated. Are they similar? Like, is there a common thread among them? And I said, no, like they're aside being assholes, they're just, they're nothing similar. And he's like, I knew you were going to say that. You are textbook. You just like when somebody likes you, which it was very true. Of course, I would settle for anybody that liked me because I just wanted to be loved. And so him and I worked together. He said, you need to set your own bar and you need to define who you want in your life, what you want in your life. And it wasn't just superficial things. For me, it was things like I wanted somebody that made me feel like my most me. I wanted somebody who felt like my closest friend. I wanted somebody who energized me. I wanted somebody who had their own passions in life and that I was proud to call my person. And so then the therapist kind of worked with me to say, if anybody doesn't fit this, you need to end it. Go on a date. And if you see something that doesn't fit, just end it. And that actually started getting to be fun. And eventually, I mean, very soon after that practice was when I met the person I'm married to now. And we've been together for almost 10 years. And so, and he's the only healthy relationship I've ever had. So it took me doing the work, like to learn to love and heal myself and feel okay with my whole story before I was ready to expect better from somebody else because I now respected myself.
Yeah. And so, like, doing this deeper work that, can be very tender and very scary to navigate,
Yeah.
what do you feel through your work with your clients is one of the hardest parts of the journey for them to navigate?
Yeah. It's different for everybody. So I would say, so this is a 7 competency framework. I do have an assessment that can kind of take a look at where you're strong and where you're not, and where we could focus on. And there's something about the fact that it's not a linear process. These are competencies.
That's why
And
it's
so
messy.
and that's messy, and you're going to need them again. I mean, I've had to rely on these, and some get weak in me, and I need to focus again on them. And so to be able to look at, hey, here's where you are strong, and here's where we have to do a little bit of work. And in doing that, I feel like it kind of hones you into a spot. And it really is meeting you where you're at. And I think that that just helps make it a less daunting exercise. It's not a quick fix and hey, here's all the tools and now let's deep dive into it everything at once. It's no, let's like slice off this little piece. And to be honest, some of the lessons, I mean, some of the competencies are really fun, So it's
Mhm.
kind of as you start doing this and you start snowballing, it's and you're working with other experts as well. I am not a licensed psychiatrist. And so, for some of the maybe, deeper healing that you might have to do for childhood trauma, it's in partnership with a therapist. But the pieces that I work on, it's really kind of that momentum. And you get these little baby steps and you start seeing what I call hugs from the universe. You start seeing these little breadcrumbs of validation that the universe is agreeing that you're on the right path. And I feel like once I can help people start recognizing them, it makes it that much easier, I think.
Hmm. I mean, the journey of healing is a tricky one in a sense that it's really easy to get, especially if you're very committed and you're really committed to bettering yourself, healing the wounds, you want to change your life, to also get stuck in the identity of healing and,
Yeah.
never really kind of transitioning outside of that and really implementing it and letting the healing process be done, at least for that particular area, so that you can integrate and do that. How do you help your clients navigate that part of the journey?
Yeah, I think it's a bit of just focusing on mindset, over, any set expectation. It's kind of so for me, that would look like, a little bit back to our vibration, conversation and, focusing more on the baby steps of right now and, getting today to day, to this not be this big effort and exhaustive work that we have to do, but instead, as just right now, instead of solving for forever, how can we define success for you? Kind of like our exercise with the word. I feel like, that vibrational word is one where, I feel like no matter where you're at in your healing journey, I think, most people have a way to describe in a word or two the feeling they want to feel more. And so it's kind of finding some of those exercises that are just a little bit more chunked down and not massive, and focusing on the small day-to-day things that are going to help you bring that feeling more into your life, and then giving you a little bit of then quick wins. Like if you just focus on bringing that feeling into your day-to-day for a little bit, it just helps kind of start influencing your mindset a little bit to I don't know, I guess give you some instant gratification of what's changing. And by doing so, I think that just kind of leads into more openness to have a mindset that's ready to then maybe do some of the bigger work.
Yeah. Well, it also prepares your body to hold that new version of
Yep,
yourself, right? Because
totally.
that version of you is new. And as much as it's more, I don't know, and maybe it's more enlightened, it's happier,
Yeah,
maybe it's more financially stable,
yeah,
maybe it's more abundant, whatever that version is of you, um, you're not used to it. Your body's not used to it, right? And
so
so
true.
really kind of connecting with those feelings is really important for preparing your nervous system to hold the capacity of that newer version of yourself.
Oh, it's so true. I love the exercise of looking. So, we talked about the seven competencies, but also pairing that with the different aspects of your life, y-
Hmm.
you know, and I love kind of, ranking and just kind of honing in on what is working. Where do you, whatever that feeling, for me, where am I already feeling that? Where am I not? So now it's like, okay, I have these three competencies are really strong for me. This one I'm really struggling with. I don't necessarily know the tools. I'm really struggling in my work right now. Let's just focus there for a little bit. I feel like so we can still celebrate everything out. And I feel like when you just slice and dice it that much, it just helps make it more palatable to be able to kind of navigate. And then I think also, I mean, for me, it's, I believe that the challenges are never going to stop. I think that the life is going to keep throwing curveballs at you. And so if you find yourself continually getting the same patterns that are painful right now, the same types of trauma, the same types of disappointment, there's some lesson you have not gotten yet. So to be able to really focus on that particular season and help dig into what is this trying to teach me, I think is just such a powerful way to shift yourself out of kind of that victim mentality, which I think
Hmm.
holds so many of us back. You
Oh, yeah.
know, I mean, it's just, I feel like that shift from why is this happening to me to what is this teaching me? It just helps so much. And then it helps you then level up. And then the next challenge is going to come, and
Yeah.
it's going to be a different lesson. So it's how can you be armed with the tools? And that's essentially the things that I talk about is truly just arming you. It's not necessarily going to look the same for everybody, but it's giving you some framework to be able to apply in the way that it works for you, to
Hmm.
be able to then piece together the parts of it that are going to solve your unique challenge to where you want to go next and get you just out a little bit unstuck from that spiral you've been going in for so long.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that is so important, navigating that part. So, you've been doing a lot of the healing work, and obviously you started to listen to that inner voice, which I think is so important. And also, like, really speaking to that part where you just said of not allowing yourself to fall into the victim mindset and belief set that keeps you exactly where you are. It does not help you move forward, which it's okay. We all drop into that
Of
state.
course. Oh my
It's
gosh.
okay to drop
Totally.
in there. It gets the best of me at times, but
Same. Oh
you
man.
you just don't want to hang out there too long, right?
That's right. That's right. And you get to decide, when the time is up.
Yeah, yeah. So I'm curious, through this whole process, have you also been encountering any more spiritual, like awakenings or things of that nature because of that, really listening to that inner voice? Has there anything else
Yes.
that's kind of come to the surface through the healing work that you've done?
Oh my gosh. So, I mean, so many things. I actually, the last, like, I would say 2 months, a friend of mine is a coach for other entrepreneurs. And she said, she calls us soulpreneurs. And she talks about how entrepreneurship is one of the greatest paths for soul work. And I couldn't agree more now since January hosting my own podcast and preparing, to be a guest on podcasts, but then also having guests on my podcast while also trying to figure out life. And I walked away from a big corporate paycheck, and first time my husband's the primary breadwinner in our house, and we've had tight periods in money with money. And for me, I would say a couple weeks ago, a specific example was really kind of a moment where it was like, okay, am I going to have to, go and get maybe some more bridge work, that's not diverting me from my path with my own business, but, it's just some additional income. We're just at this kind of pivot point right now. And, what would that look like? And we just needed a few months to get through to kind of make ends meet with all of our day-to-day stuff and with our three teenagers. And just as we were talking about that, we end up getting a message from our credit union, and we get told by a friend of ours that worked there, hey, there's going to be this home equity deal going on. We'd love to get you guys in it, and it actually like put us on our payment on hold for 3 months. You
Oh,
know, so that
oh.
happened, and then I had forgotten. I thought this, one account I thought had already paid a full balance and they hadn't paid yet. So I get this big check. Like it was just like, this day where it's just like, okay. The universe, it just that little bit of a hug. It was so validating. So that was just a little example of just
Hmm.
kind of that validation. No, don't give up, keep doing what you're doing. You just little by little, you get those reminders. But as far as kind of big level up, I've had a theme the last couple of months, and the theme has been that The word sovereignty, it keeps coming up for me. And to be honest, I didn't even fully understand the word before, like in terms of me as a business owner, me as a spiritual being. However, it just kept coming up in different ways. And, seeing it in articles, it coming up as like the name of a song, it coming up as a podcast episode. And eventually, I feel like the messaging that I started getting was really reinforcing to me the idea of stopping performing and getting to the point where we're just being. And by being, the abundance will come. Just by being your raised vibration self. And just each day only focusing on, who you are as a person and feeling at peace with that and having those, that heightened vibration feeling we talk about. And I feel like I was kind of there before, but I feel like now I feel like I leveled up. So it's
Yeah.
kind of funny. I feel like the framework that I teach is, a path that I was stuck in for quite a few years. And I was using those same tools in a circle. Every time a challenge would come, I would use those tools. And they're still really needed for people brand new to a lot of this stuff. People that are new at a crossroads, who haven't leveraged spirituality, who don't know about some of these things we've talked about today, But I feel like now I'm in a phase where I'm starting to build kind of the next phase of my model because I'm in a new phase of my kind of leveling up. And it's much more about doing anything, and instead it's really much more of defining what it's like when I simply just be fully myself.
Well, it's interesting you say that because one of my declarations in my morning meditation that I created for myself is that I love that being myself is my highest form of strategy. Yeah.
See, right? Like you just gave me goosebumps. Like
Yeah.
I feel like that's like you just said that so nice. I feel like that's one of my things. And I get a little wordy, but I feel like you just like succinctly just said that so beautifully. And I so agree with it. And I continually I'm getting reinforcement that that is so true.
It's like trying to be something you're not or that you think you're supposed to be really starts to, I think it's one of the things that leads to burnout. It's one of the things that
Yes.
really, you, again, you move into the energy of pushing versus
Yes.
receiving. And,
Yes. Oh.
it's that it really boils down to a lot of it. So
Oh my
I,
gosh, my best friend and I, we had this conversation. We probably had some gummies and we're, a little bit feeling really good one night, having a very
mhm.
philosophical conversation. And, really this was in the midst of me having this kind of sovereign level up. And the more we talked about it that night, I said, just think of it. So many people are in this grind feeling like they have to produce, do, and just get peanuts. Just get the scarcest. They're just getting by. You're getting little, but then you're just working, working, working. You're draining your energy. Your vibration sucks. So then you get littler and littler and littler, And then there's those of us that are kind of moving along and we're more at a state of peace. We're not working hard, we're working smart, fully aligned with what we're passionate about and really knowing ourselves and our gifts and what lights us up. And to outsiders that aren't there yet, they could say it looks easy. It's like, gosh, she doesn't even really do that much. She doesn't work that hard.
Mm.
Yet her life looks so abundant. We travel so much and we do all these big things. Yet what's holding people back so much is the grind that you think is going to have this big payoff someday.
I
But for
know.
most, it doesn't.
No, no, I know. And it's, like I think one of the things that also will hold a lot of entrepreneurs back is believing that well, one is that I did this too, is that you start off trading your time as value, right?
Yep.
And
Yep.
eventually you learn like that's not the way to go if you want to sustain and really grow your
Yep.
business. But what that also does is that you really limit um your capacity for what you can do. So it creates this ceiling of energetic work, like on your, I should say on your energetic work,
Yeah.
because truly, when you are, instead of always feeling like you need to hustle or you need to do this or strategize that or whatever it is, and don't get me wrong, it's important that you have certain things in place in your
Yes,
business that
of
can work
course.
for you. But when you are operating from that place, it's like, I don't know what it is, but you only can get so much. It's like there's only so much, and
Yeah.
then you just start to burn out. And then now the thing, especially if you're doing the work that we do,
Yep.
right? Like you need your energy to be in a really like spacious, open, receiving kind of place to do this work and to thrive. And so it's really hard when you try to do that and you're being an entrepreneur and then try to kind of bridge the gap between the business and the magic. By just doing all the strategy and the hustle and all that. And it's just like, no, it's like that's doesn't work. Like, I mean, don't get me
Okay.
wrong, you're always going to have a sprint season in your business somewhere where you're going to
Yes.
need to work a little bit more. But overall, um, I have found that the more that I've shifted my business, it's like I receive more for doing less.
That's right. That's exactly it.
Mhm.
That was where we landed. My bestie in our conversation was exactly that. We kept trying to beat it up, like, well, and it was just like no matter how the conversation, no matter examples, it was really it's so true. And it just continues to prove itself.
Yeah, and just so I can make sure that no one misunderstands that, when I say I do less and receive more, the work has not been diluted. In fact, the work has been increased in
Yes, a
potency. Like the
hundred percent.
results are better with my clients,
Yes,
everything is
yes.
enhanced.
That's right. But the work when it's aligned doesn't feel like a grind. It
Yeah.
doesn't it doesn't feel like work. It feels like
Hmm.
living your purpose. And so, and like you said, I mean, there's certain parts of my job that I have to just do. I mean, I might not love the accounting pieces that I have to keep track of, and there's certainly tasks that aren't my
Sure.
favorite, but they're not where I no longer have so many of them
Hmm.
that my energy is drained and I can't focus on the things that truly light me up.
Yeah.
I think
No.
that's just that's the shift is just, and that it really is a difference maker. And that's been a huge lesson for me, that I'm so excited for this season to have gotten that lesson. And for me, it feels so exciting because it really is a new level for me. It feels exciting. And I don't know if you relate to this, Nicole, but I very clearly am seeing now my spiritual path, not just my life path, but my spiritual path is now chunked out in seasons. And I can see very clearly kind of where my growth has happened. And, when I get kind of a new kind of like, I feel like new alignment to the universe and just, it's almost like a whole new world to me sometimes.
Yeah, no, it really is. And that's the fun thing. That's the beauty of becoming more intimate with yourself through the exploration of who you are, is that you
Yeah.
start to meet newer versions of yourself, new parts of yourself. And it is like meeting yourself for the first time in different ways, which makes the journey that much more exciting and
Yes.
it makes everything feel more new, right?
That's
So
right.
it
Yes.
is a big part of it. I think that's where building that bridge of intimacy between yourself and the universe
Yeah.
is essential to all of that. So I
Love that.
love having you on the show, Megan.
Thank
Thank you so much
you.
for coming on. Let my audience know where they can find you, listen to your
Of
podcast,
course.
all the good, juicy stuff.
Yay, thank you. Yeah, so please, everybody, check out the podcast Becoming is Messy. It is on most streaming platforms. Right now, it's just an audio podcast, but we're in the works to get our videos starting to be posted. So stay tuned for that. And then I also have a newsletter you can follow, which you can sign up for at meghandawson.com. One kind of final thing I would just mention about the podcast, I've talked a bit about today about the framework that I use, the imperfect level up. The first 8 episodes of the podcast are a deep dive into that whole framework. And so it's just a great free resource you can dive into and check out if you'd like. And then, of course, I offer coaching for those that want some extra support. But for now, you're welcome to just check it out for free and see if it kind of can help you on your own level up journey.
I love that. Well, I will leave all of the links for everyone in the
Thank
description.
you.
Definitely check Megan's work out. And to all my audience members, just so you know, if you've missed any of the episodes lately, the 3-day 180 retreat was just announced recently, and we are now hosting the sixth 3-day 180 retreat in February 26th. So if you're looking to change your life in 3 days or less, this is absolutely the experience for you. We are going to be incorporating plant medicine journeys of cacao and mushrooms to do the deep work and really open up your wormhole from your future to your now so that you can collapse time and remove all of the negotiation from your field. Tickets are in the link below this podcast. I'd love to see some of you there. Tickets are already selling. So if you want to come in, I suggest you act quickly. Guys, I love you. Have an incredible week, and I will be back with you very soon. Thanks again for joining me for another show on the Enlighten Up podcast. I love you guys so much for all of your continued support. So remember to raise your vibe, find your tribe, and be open to the infinite possibilities held in the mysteries that surround us all. Thanks again for sharing the show with your family and friends. And if you're new to the show and you need to find out more information about me, please head on over to my website, NicoleFrolick.com, where you can join my newsletter. And please follow me on Instagram, Telegram, and YouTube. Keep your light bright, and I'll see you next week.